So you think I should just type it in? Mm-hmm.
Listen, I find this whole like freedom defense to be really frustrating because it's like freedom is not just like a do whatever the fuck you want because you feel like it.
Answer this. How come Cuomo and Murphy basically caused most of the deaths by putting...
I'm sick and tired of the left and the right.
Where are the places where we can all meet? Where are the places that we can all see each other?
My name is Nicholas Ferrara. I work in the arts and entertainment industry, as well as the service industry and the yoga community.
My name is Rudy Rullo, and I'm a political fanatic.
I just see extremism growing more and more on every side, and it seems that we're lacking shared reality in a lot of ways.
Okay, how are we now?
Hey, I can hear you now.
Okay, good.
There you are.
Good.
What's up?
There are people out there that aren't following the guidelines, and I
Yeah.
personally think if you want to go outside, don't give me a dirty look if I'm walking in the trails of the woods and I don't want to wear a mask, But if I'm in a supermarket and that's the rules, I'm going to follow it.
Like, okay, so here's my biggest thing with that is like you're a very sane, logical, person, like educated, like so you kind of can parse between the lines of these two extremes, right? The problem is that a lot of people can't, and when you have the leader of our country making this a political black and white issue, you have these people getting in fights, it's punching people in supermarkets. You have people like claiming it's a hoax, claiming it was, the Democrats created it, like all these things that stop us from being able to do these logical things, doing our best to create an environment where maybe there is a half and half where we try and isolate people who are at risk and get other people who aren't back in the economy and figure out a way to contact trace and protect the people that might have been susceptible, and all these things that we should have been doing from the very beginning.
We have so much freedom, and people are so afraid that, we're going to go back to the days of the Revolutionary War where...
In what world do people really think that, though? Like, what project...
Jersey that don't make sense. He has basically...
But that's different from going back to, like, Revolutionary War style, like, you know what I mean?
Closed down parks in New Jersey, and when you start doing things...
They closed down...
He made a mistake, and he reversed it. But when you start doing that, you start to look like exactly what you are, a dictator.
But what I'm saying is, like, people are so quick to have distrust in our institutions and our governments that if they make one mistake with a new scientific virus that no one understands...
Answer this. How come Cuomo and Murphy basically caused most of the deaths by putting these people into nursing homes, and one of them is a veteran who is my friend's father, who should never have died because they put these people with COVID, because they thought that they were isolated. No, they're nursing homes. They were not hospitals, and they killed a lot of people. That's why people are so pissed. That one of them. The other thing is because they closed down things that they shouldn't be closing down, and you're right, there's a learning curve. But at the same time, these people it's not so much that they're uneducated. It's that they might have a family that doesn't have pre-existing conditions, that they might have to run their business. Sometimes the remedy, the cure, sometimes it's worse than anything.
Here's the other thing is like you're missing like every other progressive country with a high economic value has given the support to their citizens when they had to do these closures, these shutdowns, because we didn't just let people free reign and say, you're on your own, but we're shut down. Like, obviously that's not going to work out. People are freaking out. But every other, like in Europe, they gave like 90% of their wages to people who are out of.
See, you hit it on the nose.
Times like this is why we pay taxes for this to be.
And the problem is they're not doing, and you're right. In other words, most of the people that are the MAGA Republican type, or the conservatives, a lot of them are working people, but a lot of them own businesses. They're restaurants, different things like that. And there aren't any programs for these people, and they're dying.
The lack of unification on the issue and the lack of support for our country at the time when we needed leadership at the high. And that's why I think the Democrats did run on COVID, because it's like just the lack of leadership in general was just kind of astounding for when all we wanted to do was try to figure it out together. And all this man, you know, I hate like putting it all on Donald Trump because I don't think it's all his fault all the time. But what a president says matters. What a president does matters.
Let me be honest with you. Anyone I know, I don't know anyone that doesn't think that COVID's real, but there may be, just like there's people that believe that they're entitled to rob a store, right, and burn it down. So you're right. There could be people out there like that. I've never met anyone. They wear masks. Some people don't. But at the same time, some believe that 95% of the people don't die. And hey, let me get it
and get this over with, like measles or chickenpox. People believe that they have certain rights, and that doesn't necessarily make them, you know, necessarily a Trumper. They could be a libertarian. They could be a somebody who is.
I mean,
you know,
listen, I find this whole like freedom defense to be really frustrating, because it's like freedom is not just like a do whatever the fuck you want because you feel like it. There is a responsibility. Like we're Americans, and that used to mean something, that we're all in this together. And sometimes you sacrifice a little bit of your quote unquote freedom for the betterment of the country. And we can disagree on exactly what that means. Wearing a mask when you go into a grocery store is like the freedom that you're worried about, the communism coming into the country. I think you're really misinformed and confused about like what that means.
with the border. Yeah, I am in agreement with you that, you know, we need to basically make it so people can't just come over the border, just like in Canada, just like in any other country. They have sovereign borders, and there's policies that you have to do to come over the border. For asylum, I think that, you know, because it was being abused, that it needs to be reviewed, but done in such a way that we do it with humanity. I'm for immigration completely. And I believe that when you go through immigration and you become naturalized as a citizen, it's great. But when people are coming over the borders and they're basically having kids here so that their kids can become American, and they're collecting any way, which way that they can, the benefits of being a tax-paying citizen while being under the radar and basically not, you know, paying taxes because they can't without a Social Security card. Either way, something's got to be done with the ones that are already here. Now, we already know, you know, they say Trump is such a racist and such a xenophobe, but the guy didn't deport more people than Obama, pretty much. Trump basically shut the borders, at least secured the borders, and you didn't see...
His rhetoric pushed people from coming here, I think, more so than anything. Like, immigration dropped because he was demonizing them all across the world, you know, and I think that has an effect on people coming here. So, I mean, for better or for worse, if that was the goal, like, it definitely happened. But in the meantime, like, what backlash do you get from him demonizing these people in such a way? Like, you can make policy and you can fight for, you know, like common sense immigration reform.
You know, Donald Trump deporting every single murderer, criminal, that was awesome. But then at the same time, where my problem is I wanted the Senate, I wanted the Congress to do something with the illegals that are here to make it more competitive, so that if they did have a business until they figure out what's going to happen to them, and when they are working for my competitor, they're not getting cash, they're not off the books. I am in fear that some of them are in slavery in this country, and something needs to be done about it.
The problem is, like, if there's not accountability for them, whether it's positive or negative, yeah, there's going to be people taking advantage of them. They're going to be working for nothing or for whatever they can get because they're not in the system that we're trying to uphold here. So I think the people falling into the cracks is the problem. And I'm willing to admit that there's been media cherry picking, like, situations of, you know, hostility towards migrants or whatever, right? Like, I know it, but it did rise. Like, studies have shown that since Trump got elected, there's been rising of antagonism against anyone who even looked like they might have been not white. How can we support someone who pushes that rhetoric out there when it's like what we should be focusing on is what you're saying, you know, is figuring out how to help these people. Just in a general sense, I think there's a better way to try to talk about how we integrate people into our society at this point. And I just, again, what you're saying, it's like both sides in Congress are not sitting down and saying, let's figure out how to make this system better. And I will give Trump some credit that he brought light to this issue that was being kind of swept over. And like, I mean, yeah, and like, ironically, yes, like Obama did deport a lot of people and he did build the cages, but the problem is that he wasn't treating them, and the only people that were put in cages during Obama's tenure was people who were actually caught with drugs or who were caught as criminals that came over. Trump was putting them in cages to prove a point, to fear tactic type of stuff, and just automatically throw it. He used those policies with an aggressive fear-based tactic where it's like, and that came the backlash from the left of like the kids in the like, you know, like kids in cages, like, which no one wants to see. Like any rational non-sociopathic person doesn't want to see that.
And our side is saying, well, you're calling us xenophobic, you're calling us racist because we don't want people. See, you are for one of the biggest things that Trump people are for. We're not necessarily want to deport these people and hurt them. What we want is we want the border secured so illegals can't just keep coming in.
It was like surreal, like to hear them say, it's not fair you're allowing Steve Bannon to be on. It's like, it's not fair that almost 99% of the conservatives are censored and ready. Maybe 20% of your people are. They're swayed. And it is what it is. But yeah, Bannon is an example that we are, you know, not swayed all the time. He knows somebody in Facebook or something.
I mean, this may be a bias of my own, but like, does it ever occur to a lot of conservatives that maybe they're getting more censored, not because of Twitter's bias, but because there's a lot more conspiracy theory, fake news in that environment?
You bring up a great point. I agree. I don't share things about conspiracy theories.
But you endorse Donald Trump.
That Donald Trump necessarily is a conspiracy theorist.
You don't agree that Donald Trump promotes conspiracy theories?
Trump believes certain things, and he puts out his First Amendment views. And if he's wrong, he may not be admitting it, or if he's right, he might not be admitting it.
Wait. So you think he's allowed to tweet?
It might not be a conspiracy theory to him when he's tweeting it.
The one you just said.
But I don't know if he did that.
No, but I'm telling you he did.
I mean, I never knew that he did.
For this thought experiment, if let's say he did, right? Do you think he should have been able to do
My
that?
thing is, I don't know if he knew that it was or wasn't.
Okay, but if it wasn't real, should they have censored him?
Who, Twitter? I don't think you should put out anything that isn't true if you know it.
But then you're saying it's his First Amendment right to put it out if he wants to.
Sir, they shouldn't be censored because it's not a, if it's First Amendment, right, and it's a publication, newspapers print stuff that isn't necessarily true and they're allowed to do it.
I think bringing it back to like the technology thing, I think there's a difference between publications that have been around for years and years and years who have ethical, whether or not they're like, we have to be able to separate bias from like actual tried and true like ethical and business practices.
I believe that any police officer who breaks the law should face the same law we all do. Additionally, no police officer should ever abuse their power. They're not out there all the time to try to arrest people. They're out there to actually uphold the laws. These inner city areas, all these laws and everything that's going on there, this is Democratic controlled areas. Well, they just want to defund the police department. Well, you know what? Look at what's going on in Oregon. Look at what's going on in Seattle. All these other areas. It's unacceptable. And the police are at a point where, they're being put in danger's way.
I agree with you. I don't think we should be demonizing the police the way that a lot of the the left side is. I went to one of the marches here in LA after the George Floyd video, and I felt really uncomfortable when they were saying like f the police, all this stuff. I've done a lot of research on the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and I think this was like a catalyst for an issue that wasn't exactly related. Like, of course, what happened to George Floyd, of course, what happened to Breonna Taylor, of course, what happened to all the other names we talk about is horrible, and we should know. And no one wants that. I don't think any non-sociopathic person wants all of that, right? And I think the problem is that we took these cherry-picked, isolated incidents of wrongdoing and with no proof in a lot of them if it was racism or not. A lot of it was poor police training, which is like, we should be, and I hate the word defund police because I think it should be reformed. There is history of policing that has been to the detriment of Black communities, right? And for, not that they shouldn't be policed because there are more crime in Black areas, right? But what I agree with you is that it's a half an economic thing too. It's like, it's equality based on bias, which is there and should be addressed in a reasonable, logical way, but also should be addressed economically, which is making sure that the communities that are over policed or having a lot of high crime get that funding for community services, like treated like a suburb where they get money for community after school activity, education, give a sort of reparations to these communities that have been so decimated by redlining policies, by like the, you know, even Biden's 1994 crime bill, all these horrible like things that we've done in claim of law and order, but we're actually forgetting half of our country that has been forgotten over and over and over again. Not that we should defund the police, but we should figure out a way to make sure that the police are doing their job and not the job of mental health experts or community organizers or breaking up, you know, abuse situation. Okay, so final thoughts.
So the project went really well, as expected.
It's good to feel like you can sit down with someone who on paper doesn't align with you and discuss and find common ground on politically sensitive issues.
I, like Nicholas, see everybody as, you know, human beings, and, you know, we all have to get along. We all have to work together.
While I didn't expect either of our views to seismically shift after this, I do think the seeds were planted.
Nicholas did a great job, and he knew his issues, and I really enjoyed it. It was absolutely awesome.
Yeah, hopefully this is a baby step to a better world in some corner of the multiverse.
The clips were fun. You know, I got to do it in the supermarket where I go, to the beach with my dog. You know, a lot of the issues, you know, we might not agree wholeheartedly on some of the things, but one thing that we both agree with, you know, is you got to be kind to one another